revisiting how results were being assessed using the previous version of the government excellence model. The learning insofar as measuring excellence maturity is concerned has been significant, and most government entities have benefited from the exposure to the philosophy of performance measurement using KPIs at various levels and structuring their utilization so that they are capable of impacting positively on their performance improvement, but also so that they can continue to pursue excellence towards a leading position. There are, however, shortcomings identified using different feedback mechanisms, and on reflection, the tool that was used to assess results maturity has had some notable deficiencies, but also, and more significantly, may not be the right way to move forward in assessing excellence with the concept of government ecosystems based on a DNA that feeds from digital transformation and based on planning for the future as if it's happening now. The results maturity assessment tool using GEM 1.0 on reflection, we're focusing more on the structure of KPI management largely, and the dimensions were concerned with the depth and width of KPI spread within each individual government entity. The question was on comprehensiveness and usability by looking at how wide the practice of performance measurement is and whether the KPIs designed are aligned with the capabilities deployed and the quality of the KPIs in terms of whether they are descriptive in nature, whether they offer the opportunity for doing proper diagnosis, and at an advanced stage whether they are subjected to predictive analysis that is in line with the capabilities deployed, but particularly whether they offer the opportunity for impacting at a strategic level. One point to note from this maturity evaluation is that the focus is all the time on the quality of the KPI and the usage of the KPI. So in a sense, the measurement was more on the means, whilst making the ends more implicit, at least in the design phase or in the deployment phase. When it comes to the evaluation of results, likewise, the focus is more on the targets set against existing KPIs and whether a stretch has taken place by making the targets more ambitious and whether an organization has been able to close the gap and meet the set targets, and whether an organization can continue to stretch its performance by setting even more ambitious targets and driving its performance to achieve or exceed the existing target. And once again, the focus tends to be on the mechanistic side of driving performance as opposed to really looking at the purpose of measurement, which is to track value, to track what gets delivered, to measure the real impact that is assessed in terms of outcomes that benefit stakeholders. And the third aspect that the results maturity assessment tool based on GEM 1.0 uses is the degree of closing the loop for driving improvement through learning, and whether the closed loop is helping the organization demonstrate that it sustains the improvement and the trends of tracking performance show and depict a path that is positive. And in the end, the ultimate is to see whether the positive trend of sustainability is observed longitudinal over data sets stretching from 4 years to up to 8 years. The shortcoming here, once again, is that the emphasis is on what KPIs are doing as opposed to what KPIs are producing and delivering in terms of ends. So it's more focusing on the means again. And the second shortcoming is that the trends tend to be based on a linear behavior. And the ecosystem perspective is not linear, since the relevance is very much dependent on what goes on externally, and the level of transformation will dictate how measurement takes place, and in many instances the level of disruption would not be compatible with the mindset of measuring from a linear perspective. And lastly, the results maturity assessment tool using GEM 1.0 looks us to the ultimate impact of the results produced and whether it is helping a government entity achieve at an international level in specific areas or in most of the critical areas, and what is the level of international positioning towards a leading or dominant status. So overall, the results assessment tool makes it implicit when it comes to outcomes, when it comes to tracking value that is created, when it comes to the outcomes delivered to stakeholders. And more importantly, a major shortcoming is the assumption that data that tracks over longitudinal periods of time is an indication of sustainability, and most organizations do not have the richness of tracking on a linear basis over a long period of time, such as 8 years. The new method is to look at measurement from an ecosystem perspective, and relevance redefines completely the way tracking results from an outcomes perspective is and should take place. So GEM 2.0 results assessment dimensions have introduced new thinking. Relevance of KPIs as opposed to comprehensiveness and usability is the starting point. The assessment of outcomes for the organization itself, labeled operational excellence, the external assessment of impact and outcomes from a competitiveness perspective for the organization, for the national level KPIs, and for the international competitiveness in support of the whole country pursuing its dream to become one of the best governments in the world. And lastly, tracking the real impact, which is on the quality of life and on national well-being. The description of each of the 4 dimensions is as follows. Relevance, it is to track with everything that is relevant, timely, robust, and reliable in terms of measurement, and the KPIs used must be capable of monitoring and understanding, together with predicting performance and key outcomes, not necessarily to track the KPI itself and how it is behaving, but rather to track the performance, which is the outcome, and the outcome that is measured in terms of key beneficiaries or stakeholders. Number 2, performance excellence is to look at whether the organization establishes a quality foundation and whether it has operationally achieved standards of excellence by being effective, efficient, by ensuring that its processes are reliable, and by ensuring that the deployment of its capabilities deliver dependability and consistency of operations, and doing so by the optimal use of resources. Thirdly, competitiveness impact is to track the level of maturity of real excellence in terms of the outstanding performance outcomes that impact on competitiveness nationally and internationally. For the impact on national well-being, which is the ultimate outcome that gets delivered through value creation, and which impacts on the quality of life and on happiness. In terms of maturity, the levels will demonstrate the extent to which due care is being exercised insofar as relevance is concerned by using insight and looking at what matters most and what must be designed to be the sensor, the tracking device, and the indicator that will inform as to how the behavior of the dynamic ecosystem is taking place and what can be expected in terms of outcomes. And this cannot be done on a linear basis, but rather by using insight and enriching the insight through the manipulation of large amounts of data, enabled by the use of advanced analytical tools for moving the agenda from a historical retrospective mindset to a descriptive mindset to a current insight mindset, and focusing on the future through foresight and outsight. In terms of performance excellence, the maturity levels are to ensure that operational excellence takes place, that quality as a foundation is well embedded into the culture, and that government entities are efficient to a very high degree. They are effective in terms of volume, variety, and the value delivered, and they blend the level of results and indicators to show that there is permeation throughout the whole ecosystem, and to ensure that overall operational excellence can help the government entity achieve at the top level and position itself towards a leading level. Competitiveness impact is measuring outcomes from the point of view of what is expected at a significant level and delivering exceptional performance to make the government entity a benchmark and a shiny example of stellar performance, but also to help the overall government achieve the ambitious vision of being one of the best governments in the world. And the impact on national well-being is to see the extent to which the performance of a particular entity is impacting on the quality of life and making a contribution to the national agenda on well-being, and the extent to which the contribution is being made.